I have been in lines where I signed books for people, and a young man or woman will walk up to me with a book to be signed, and as I'm signing it, they're saying, I'd like to be a writer, but I don't like to read. And I always just stop. I'm stopped cold by this. I don't see any way that somebody can be a literary writer without absorbing and immersing themselves in literature. You're not going to be able to do it by watching movies, which is one art form, or television, whether it's episodic television or whether it's long form television. In order to write literary art, you have to read literature, because the experience delivered by literature is an experience of language and the possibilities of language, and for us as English speakers, the possibilities of the English tongue. So I like writers who are prose stylists. I like writers who show me how to use English even better than I do at the present moment. I want to see a writer whose language is rich, this is what I'm looking for. So when you read a novel, you are undergoing, let me walk through this carefully. Sartre, in What is Literature, has the best phenomenological description of the reading process I have ever seen. People may have problems with his politics in What is Literature, where he talks about engaged literature, but when he talks about the reading experience, here's what he says. You look at the page, there are black marks on white paper. They are dead. They are not alive. Your consciousness infuses those black marks with meaning. You see a character. You see Bigger Thomas. Suddenly you see Bigger Thomas doing things. You're not looking at a page anymore. You're looking at Bigger Thomas running across the snow-covered roofs of Chicago away from the police. And you're so absorbed in this world that has suddenly appeared between you, your consciousness, and the page, that you don't hear the doorbell ring. You don't hear the pot or the kettle you left on the stove, because a world that is transcendent, existing only in your consciousness, made possible only by the reader animating those black marks on the page, has suddenly manifested itself. That is the literary experience. There is nothing like that. You go to movies, you're looking at images. You look at television, it's images. In other words, you don't have to do the same work as when you read a novel. So every art form has its own essence. Every art form has its own possibilities, and they're different. So the experience of a poem, of a short story, of a novel is an undergoing of experience with language and consciousness in a fashion that is transcendent. So for example, readers will say, I read The Lord of the Rings. I read The Hobbit. I had an image in my mind of what a hobbit looked like. But then I went to the movie and I saw what they did with the hobbit. That's not the Hobbit that I remember. Well, when they created that, and it is a contract between writer and reader, as Sartre says. It's a contract. And as soon as the writer doesn't do his job, the reader can walk. But as long as the writer is doing his job of giving us a sensuous world, as we were talking about it, with sights and smells that can be imaginatively picked up by the reader, then the reader continues to keep that world alive in consciousness. It's a transcendent object. Bigger Thomas is forever waiting to be executed. At the end of the novel, he hasn't been killed. He is eternally waiting to be executed, okay? Bigger Thomas does not exist in the world. He exists as a transcendent object the same way a number is a transcendent object. What do I mean? I mean that the number 1, 2, and 3 do not exist out here in nature, okay? They are transcendent objects. What you have out here is a tree, but you don't have one. What you have out here is not Bigger Thomas, okay? You got people. Bigger is a transcendent object made possible to live in your consciousness by the basis of what Wright put on the pages with those black marks on the page. So the reading experience is a transcendent experience, not repeatable in any other form of artistic expression, which have their own virtues. I don't want to say they don't, because they do.